Over 14 million Americans over the age of 50 report significant memory complaints to their doctor every year. In fewer than 10% of cases is the real cause properly identified. The other 90% are told some version of the same thing. This is normal aging. Try to get more sleep. Reduce your stress. And they leave the appointment with nothing. No mechanism, no test, no path forward. Here is what those patients were almost certainly never told. In the majority of cases, what people experience as brain fog after 50, the word retrieval failures, the mental slowness, the inability to concentrate the way you used to, is not early dementia. It is not neurodegeneration. It is a metabolic problem, specific, measurable, and in most cases reversible. Your brain is not failing. It is starving. And the reason it is starving has everything to do with what is happening in your bloodstream, not in your neurons. I'm Dr. Marcus Reid. I'm 58 years old. I practice in Boston, and I specialize in brain health, metabolic function, and aging. For adults in their 50s, 60s, and beyond. I notice it myself at 58. The moments where a word sits just out of reach. The afternoons where focus requires more effort than it used to. I have run my own labs. I know exactly what is driving it, and I'm going to show you today what to look for, what to test, and what to do about it. Subscribe to Dr. Marcus Reid and hit the like button. What I'm about to cover, your last appointment almost certainly did not include. That is what this channel is for. Let me start by dismantling the most dangerous myth in this entire conversation. The myth: brain fog and memory complaints after 60 are just inevitable aging. There is nothing specific causing it, and nothing specific you can do about it. That is not what the research shows. What the research shows is that there is a condition affecting an estimated 88 million Americans, that is 1 in 3 adults, that is silently damaging the brain's ability to use its primary fuel source, years before any standard lab test flags it as a problem. That condition is insulin resistance. And the connection between insulin resistance and the aging brain is so well established in the scientific literature that some researchers have begun calling Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes. That term is not universally accepted, but the underlying mechanism it describes is real, documented, and reproducible. Here is how it works. Your brain accounts for roughly 2% of your body weight, but consumes approximately 20% of the glucose circulating in your blood. It is the most metabolically demanding organ in your body. And unlike your muscles, which can switch to burning fat for fuel when glucose is unavailable, your brain is almost entirely dependent on glucose as its primary energy source. To get glucose from the bloodstream into a brain cell, insulin must act as a key, unlocking the door and allowing the fuel to enter. When insulin resistance develops, when your cells gradually stop responding efficiently to insulin, something devastating happens in the brain. There is plenty of glucose in the bloodstream, but the brain cells cannot access it. Your brain cells are standing at a locked door with a fistful of cash. The fuel is right there, but the lock has been changed. And the brain, unable to power itself properly, begins to slow down. That slowness is what you experience as brain fog. The word that was just out of reach. The task you started and forgot before you finished. The conversation where you lost the thread. The afternoon where your mind simply refused to fire at full speed. This is not your neurons dying. This is your neurons running on empty. And here's the most important part. This process begins years, sometimes decades, before any standard blood test catches it. Your fasting glucose can be 98. Your A1C can be 5.5. Your doctor can look at those numbers and tell you everything looks great, and your brain can already be running at 60% of its fuel capacity. Let me tell you about a patient I'll call Linda. 64 years old, retired school principal from outside of Providence, Rhode Island. Accomplished woman. Ran her school district for 18 years. Sharp, organized, precise. Linda came to see me because she was frightened. Not because she had been diagnosed with anything, because she hadn't been, and she knew something was wrong. For 2 years, she had been noticing a cognitive decline that she described as subtle but consistent. She could still do her job. She could still hold a conversation. But the precision was gone. She'd walk into a room and not remember why. She'd lose words she had used confidently her entire adult life. She'd start a sentence and find herself unable to locate the second half of it. She had seen her primary care physician twice about it. Both times she had been reassured. Her cognitive screening tests came back normal. Her standard labs were unremarkable. She was told it was stress, or perimenopause, or just the natural cognitive changes of her 60s. She was not reassured. She came to me because her mother had died of Alzheimer's disease and she was not willing to simply wait and see. Here is what I found when I looked beyond the standard panel. Her fasting glucose was 101. Not alarming by standard criteria. Her A1C was 5.6, technically in the normal range, though at the very top of it. But her fasting insulin was 18 microunits per milliliter. Normal fasting insulin should be below 10. Below 5 is optimal. At 18, her pancreas was working almost twice as hard as it should to manage a blood sugar that looked normal on the surface, because it was compensating furiously. That compensation is what insulin resistance looks like before diabetes. The glucose stays controlled, but it costs enormous hormonal effort to keep it there. And in the brain, despite that effort, the cellular uptake of glucose is impaired. The fuel line is partially blocked. Her homocysteine was 14 micromoles per liter. Normal is below 10. Elevated homocysteine is a direct neurotoxin. It damages the walls of small blood vessels in the brain, impairs myelin integrity, and is associated with accelerated brain atrophy. A study from Oxford University showed that elevated homocysteine is associated with brain shrinkage at nearly twice the normal rate. Her high sensitivity CRP, the neuroinflammation marker, was 3.8 milligrams per liter. Above 3 indicates significant systemic inflammation. Chronic inflammation in the brain impairs the same insulin signaling pathways involved in glucose uptake. It makes insulin resistance in the brain worse. None of these numbers had been checked at her previous appointments. They are not part of a standard annual physical panel. They require specific, deliberate requests. Linda started the protocol I'm going to describe. 12 weeks later, she sat across from me and said something I want you to hear. She said, "The fog lifted." Not all at once, but over about 6 weeks, I started finding words again. I started finishing thoughts. The precision came back. Not because I gave her a medication, because we identified what was starving her brain and gave it back its fuel supply. Here are the 5 warning signs that what you are experiencing is metabolic brain fog. Not aging, not early dementia. Warning sign number 1. Word retrieval failure that is getting worse over time, not stable. Everyone has tip-of-the-tongue moments. That is normal at any age. What is not normal is a progressive pattern where it happens more frequently, with more common words, in lower stress situations than it used to. If you are losing words mid-sentence that you have used your entire life, words like ordinary nouns, names of familiar objects, names of people you know well, and this has been getting incrementally worse over the past year or 2, that is a pattern worth investigating metabolically. Warning sign number 2. Inability to multitask the way you used to. You used to be able to hold 3 things in your working memory simultaneously. Now you can hold 1. You start a task, get interrupted, and the original task evaporates. You need to write things down that you never used to write down. You feel cognitively overwhelmed by situations that would not have challenged you 5 years ago. This is a function of prefrontal cortex efficiency, your brain's executive command center, and the prefrontal cortex is particularly sensitive to the metabolic disruptions we just described. Insulin resistance and neuroinflammation hit executive function early and hard. Warning sign number 3. Reading comprehension has declined. You read a paragraph and realize you absorbed nothing. You read it again. You still can't hold it. You have to read things 2 or 3 times to process information that used to enter on the first pass. This is particularly alarming to people who have always been avid readers. This is a working memory issue combined with reduced processing speed. Both are measurable, and both are associated with the metabolic drivers I described. Warning sign number 4. The afternoon mental shutdown. Not tiredness. Not the desire to nap. A genuine cognitive shutdown where your brain simply refuses to fire at useful capacity between approximately 1 and 4 in the afternoon. You can push through physically, but the cognitive work, the writing, the problem-solving, the complex thinking, becomes functionally impossible. This afternoon, CLIF is one of the most reliable clinical indicators of blood sugar dysregulation. After a carbohydrate-heavy lunch, blood glucose spikes sharply and then drops, often below the fasting baseline. That drop triggers a brief cortisol response, but if the underlying metabolic machinery is compromised, the brain's glucose supply becomes unstable. What you feel is the shutdown. Warning sign number 5. Waking between 2 and 4 in the morning with a racing mind that won't stop. This is the sign that most surprises people when I connect it to metabolic brain function. But the mechanism is direct. Blood sugar that dropped too low during the night triggers a cortisol and adrenaline release, your body's emergency fuel mobilization system. That hormonal surge is what wakes you up. And once cortisol is elevated at 3 a.m., your brain is in a physiological state of alert that makes returning to sleep difficult or impossible. If you are waking at this time regularly, your blood sugar is almost certainly unstable, and your brain is paying the price during both the night and the following day. If 2 or more of these 5 signs apply to you, the conversation you need to have is not about dementia screening. It is about metabolic testing. Here are the 4 tests to request at your next appointment. Write these down. Test number 1. Fasting insulin. Not fasting glucose. Not A1C alone. Fasting insulin specifically. This is the test that reveals insulin resistance before glucose becomes abnormal. Normal is below 10 microunits per milliliter. Optimal is below 5. Above 15 indicates significant insulin resistance regardless of what your glucose number shows. Most standard panels do not include fasting insulin. You have to ask for it by name. Test number 2. HbA1c with fasting glucose together. The combination of these two tells a more complete story than either alone. An A1C of 5.6 with a fasting glucose of 102 and a fasting insulin of 18 tells a very different story than the same A1C with a fasting glucose of 88 and a fasting insulin of 4. The numbers exist in relationship to each other. Test number 3. Homocysteine, a simple blood test. Ask for it by name. Normal is below 10 micromoles per liter. Optimal is below 7. If yours is above 12, the research is clear. This level of homocysteine is directly neurotoxic. It is also addressable. Elevated homocysteine in most cases responds to B12, folate, and B6 supplementation. Straightforward, inexpensive, and highly effective. Test number 4. High sensitivity CRP. This is your neuroinflammation marker. Normal is below 1 milligram per liter. Above 3 is significantly elevated and associated with accelerated cognitive aging. Unlike some inflammatory markers, HSCRP responds relatively quickly to lifestyle interventions, within weeks in many cases. All 4 of these tests are covered by Medicare and standard insurance when ordered with clinical indication. When you call your doctor's office, say, "I'd like to add fasting insulin, homocysteine, and high-sensitivity CRP to my next blood draw." That is the entire ask. Now the protocol. What actually changes the metabolic environment of your brain? Step 1. Protein at breakfast. Minimum 25 to 30 grams. This is the single highest impact nutritional change for brain fog that I have seen in clinical practice. Protein at breakfast stabilizes blood glucose for the entire morning, prevents the mid-morning cortisol spike that follows a carbohydrate-only breakfast, and provides the amino acid building blocks for neurotransmitter synthesis. 3 eggs. Greek yogurt with a scoop of protein powder. Smoked salmon. A protein shake made with whole ingredients. The source matters less than the quantity. Get to 25 grams before 9 in the morning, and your brain will function differently by 11. Step 2. Eliminate liquid sugar entirely for 21 days. Not reduce. Eliminate. Fruit juice, sweetened coffee drinks, flavored yogurt, soda, sports drinks. Every one of these delivers glucose to your bloodstream at a speed your insulin system cannot manage gracefully. The spike and crash cycle that follows is exactly what drives the afternoon cognitive shutdown and the 3 a.m. wake-up. 21 days is enough time to reset your insulin sensitivity measurably. Most people notice a difference in cognitive clarity within the first week. Step 3. Walk for 10 minutes within 30 minutes of finishing every meal. This is the most underutilized tool in metabolic medicine. Working muscles absorb glucose from the bloodstream directly, without requiring insulin. A 10-minute walk after a meal can blunt the post-meal glucose spike by 30 to 40%. This translates directly into more stable brain fuel availability in the 2 to 3 hours following that meal. You do not need to go to a gym. You do not need to break a sweat. Walk around the block. Walk around your apartment. Just move for 10 minutes after you eat. Every meal. Step 4. Magnesium glycinate at 300 to 400 milligrams before bed. Magnesium is a cofactor in over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body, including several involved in glucose metabolism and neurological function. Magnesium deficiency is extremely common in adults over 50, estimated to affect 45 to 60% of the population, and is associated with both insulin resistance and impaired cognitive function. Magnesium glycinate specifically crosses the blood-brain barrier effectively and does not cause the digestive side effects of magnesium oxide or magnesium citrate at higher doses. Step 5. A 12-hour minimum eating window each day. This does not require aggressive fasting. It simply means that there is a 12-hour period every day during which you are not eating. If dinner ends at 7 p.m., breakfast begins at 7 a.m. During that window, insulin remains low. The brain shifts toward using ketones, an alternative fuel source derived from fat, as a supplement to glucose. Ketones are neuroprotective. They reduce neuroinflammation, and they provide brain cells with an energy source that bypasses the broken insulin lock entirely. This is why some people with metabolic brain fog feel dramatically clearer when they start intermittent fasting. Their brain is finally getting fuel it can actually use. How old are you right now? Drop it in the comments. After 50, the brain's sensitivity to insulin disruption increases. The compensatory mechanisms that kept glucose delivery stable in your 40s become less reliable. The window between optimal brain function and metabolic brain starvation narrows. Your age changes what I would prioritize first and how urgently I would have this conversation with your physician. Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. Here is what I want you to do in the next 24 hours. Number 1. Tomorrow morning, eat 25 to 30 grams of protein before anything else. Not coffee first, not juice, protein first. Number 2. After every meal today, walk for 10 minutes. That is it. Just walk. Number 3. Tonight, take 300 milligrams of magnesium glycinate before bed. Not magnesium oxide, glycinate specifically. Number 4. At your next blood draw, ask specifically for fasting insulin, homocysteine, and high sensitivity, CRP, in addition to whatever your doctor orders routinely. Number 5, for 21 days, eliminate all liquid sugar. Every form of it. Start with one of those 5, the easiest one, the one you can do in the next hour, then add the next. Everything I've covered today is for your education and understanding. Your situation is unique. Use this as a starting point for a real conversation with your physician, not a substitute for one. If you have been told your memory complaints are just aging and you have walked away with nothing to work with, that conversation was incomplete. You now know what the complete version looks like. Subscribe to Dr. Marcus Reid. Hit the bell. And if you know someone who has been quietly frightened about their memory and been told everything looks normal, send them this video. The test they need has probably never been ordered. I'll see you next time. Take care of yourselves. I mean that.